Good morning, home church. How is everybody doing? Welcome to the home church podcast. We've got we do have a full cast and crew. He's just sneaking. Here he comes, ladies and gentlemen. The Zach Nash. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. Figuring out the media side of it to where it's a little bit more smooth this time around.
Trying to figure out the best way for all of us to make an entrance on the switcher board and all that fun stuff. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you again for joining the podcast. For those of you that, for some reason, haven't watched episode 1 and 2, we have now started which we kind of started it with the end of last season, add the video in. Jessica, and before Jessica, it was
just Jessica, if I remember correctly.
No, there was one more that was a video. I feel like there were 2 videos. We did 2 videos. One was Jessica, and there was. Anyways, but we've added video into it, and like we spoke on the one before, Zach was here. Running around the other Zach. We are going to try to get on more platforms as far as Apple and Spotify, iHeartRadio, all of that stuff. So that way you're not stuck with your phone on YouTube open draining the battery, especially with Larry almost breaking the bank with 2 hours and 40 minutes. Some odd minutes.
Yeah.
It bring me in. I'm like, how do I beat that one?
That's the fun part about it, though, is like whenever you don't have a script, you don't have anything planned, there's nothing predetermined, it's just coming on and talking about things. So we do we have any more planned guests coming
We
up?
don't
So
at the moment.
we're wide open. If anybody feels it necessary to, they want to tell their testimony, you want to give your story, or maybe you felt led to come on here and tell something different. I don't know. Like there was what was that?
It's a gnat.
Gnat or something,
okay.
yeah.
I've got mosquitoes at my house, so I'm gun shy. Anything that buzzes, I'm not taking a chance on it. So, but if that's something that interests you, or there's something that maybe it's not a testimony per se, you just kind of want to sit and talk about the Lord or something like that, we're more than happy to just sit down and talk about the Lord with you. So with that being said, our guest today is none other than my mother, Dianna Long. Good morning, Dianna. How are you?
Good morning, son. I am wonderful.
And it is good to have you on the podcast.
Wonderful to be here.
She had, after my testimony, she really didn't want to, come on the podcast without asking or, anything like that. So she asked me one day if I didn't mind. I'm like, yeah, it's not going to bother me if you want to come on the podcast. It's not about my side of the story. So, like, that's one thing that I really want to push is I didn't have her on so that way she could tell about my childhood. This is going to be her testimony, her childhood, her growing up, her coming to Christ. This isn't Dianna and Nathan. We're going to talk about that story.
That could be another episode or something.
Well,
yeah.
And that may be parts of it, but I just wanted to let everybody know that I didn't. This isn't a set-up script, and we didn't have Dianna on here to talk about, I knew whenever Nathan was a child. That's not what this is about. This is her testimony, her story. This is her. So that's one thing that I did want to push is that it's not
her version
staged.
of your story. Yeah,
it's not staged. It's not pre-planned. This was something that she at first didn't want to share, and I think it's a leap of faith because it is awkward. It is something that, hey, it's my son that, we're going to be talking to and all that fun stuff. And it could be awkward and it could shy you away from wanting to give your testimony. So for some, this may be a release. This may be something that helps you in your faith. This may be something that you've needed. This may be something that it was a step of faith for you because the enemy was trying to hold you back from it. And I found that my favorite outcomes of situations are the ones whenever you wanted to give up and you wanted to say, no, that's awkward, and I didn't really want to be a part of that. But you went forward and did it anyways. And there was nothing but good things that came from it because you gained confidence in the Lord and you realize what he can do. You realize that that was just something that was made up in your head that was stopping you from this happiness and peace all along. So that is one thing that I think giving a testimony also helps. I don't know how it made you feel after you got done giving your testimony, but you realize that people that you sit across from at church are going to hear this, you know. But not only that, like Zach, your dad listens, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So with me, your son, you know, it can be awkward. So I just want to thank you again for being on and just understanding that this is your story. So,
Absolutely.
but with that being said, what is it that here at Home Church that you, um, I guess, volunteer? What parts of the church do you volunteer in?
I volunteer at the greeting. I'm at the door with Sarah and many others. I used to be a greeter for 7, 8 years at another church, but so I always have felt comfortable with people and um, just enjoy getting to know others. So that to me was just when I came here, I felt led to do something. I know in my heart that the gift of, being a caring person, loving person, children is highly one of my gifts. I would have to say that God has put children as very heavy on my heart. So, and with saying that, maybe there will be a time when I help my children's ministry here as well. But for now, I am a greeter and I help do whatever little things that I am able.
And I know, like, one of the crazy things about home church that I never thought, because the church that we went to whenever I was growing up was James River. And so that was where she, and we're not bad mouthing James River, we're not,
Exactly.
anything. It's just that's where we're from Ozark, that's where we went to James River, and so that's where she served. But one of the things that was weird about James River, yeah, there was, you were friendly when you were a greeter, but it seemed like when service was over, there was always that urgency of you need to hurry and get a good parking spot because you're going to be
Oh,
waiting in line.
absolutely.
So it seemed like when service was over, you were done, you were out the door, you were hurrying to your car because you had places to be. Let's hurry and go. Here at home church, I've never felt the urgency to hurry, leave. I mean, there's always that point
Never.
where it's like, okay, it's 12 o'clock. We still haven't picked where we're going to eat for
Right. Yeah.
young adults yet. So there's always sometimes that, but it's always 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes after service we're
Right.
standing around talking. So you make the comment about serving here at front. There's all you see all the people that come in, and you obviously you can't greet every one of them, every single one of them, because you'll be off talking to this one. Um, but one of the things that I've always loved is ever since I called you and said, "Hey, what church are you going to?" and you were like, "Oh, home church. It's not too far from the apartment." Blah blah blah. I come walking up and I see Clayton, and that was it's kind of like a turning point for me because I don't want to say that John Lindell's an amazing preacher, but John Lindell kind of, whenever you're as big of a church as that and you have people that dislike you like he does, he can't just shake hands and walk around with
Yes.
everybody before service. And I've never personally met John. I don't know how I don't know what to say about him, but I never seen John face to face. Shake my hand and talk to me about my day and know who my friends and family were and all of that stuff. And that was Clayton. I mean, the second or third time you're here, Clayton makes it a point to know something about you. What was it about home church that brought you here and got you started here? Because had it not been for you guys being at home church at the time when you were, you may have been somewhere else, and I would have just gone probably wherever you were going at that time. But it was home church. Why was it home church?
Well, before it was home church, it was Venture. We had been attending there for a couple of years, and then COVID came and kind of hit everybody, kind of shut everybody down, and things changed with Venture, and then they became home church. Well, in the meantime, between that Venture and home church, we started going. We lived next to a pastor, Wally, and he had a Methodist church that he taught at, or preached at, I should say. So we went there for a while, but it just wasn't where we needed to be. And we knew home church had started, and it had started before they got this building here. So we
The good old blue room.
yeah, the blue room. I hear about it. So we saw it on Facebook and decided that we would just come here because we knew Clayton. He was over the youth at Venture, so we knew we liked, and he would preach once in a while. So we decided to try it, and just like you said, son, you just feel at home when you come here. Everybody's so friendly and warm, inviting. I mean, you get a smile when you're out in the parking lot and you're not fighting for a parking spot and you don't have to wait in line to go home, when you get back in your vehicle. But I mean, and that's not even the issue. I mean, we just felt so warm and invited when we. And then, of course, once you hear him preach, he preaches straight from the Bible. He don't turn any words into something different. It's what God says. And it's just home.
And so we'll kind of start in with your story, your testimony. I've known, I mean,
You've known your mom your entire life.
so there will be obviously questions that if I know the answers to, I'll probably try to convey too much because I know who they are and others may. So if I get to a say in a story because I already know the person and I jump to a conclusion at the end of a story and you're like, hey man, please stop. Like I'll rewind. But the spirit's with it, so I'm not worried about any of that. But so
Right.
we'll go and start with your testimony. I remember ever since I was a child, church. That's one thing that you and Dad were adamant about. I have found in Grandma's basement, now our house, the books, the learning books, and they were Jesus coloring books. They were cassette tapes that were the story of Jesus. It was animated series. Carmen, all of the Gaither vocal band. Ever since I was a kid, I that was one of my favorite things was the Gaither vocal band because it wasn't country twangy music. I like all kinds of music, but it was a different kind of music. Um, so, was that the case with you as well? Ever since you were a kid, do you remember the church, the Christ, all of that story that Was that brought up in you as well?
Um,
Or was it something that you were like, this is something I want to make sure I instill heavily because I didn't have that?
well, to go back, I have four older brothers with four uncles. Uh, they actually are the ones that brought me into the church. I was probably between 3 and 4 years old. Of course, time is these days are completely different. Would you let your 3 or 4 year old ride on a church bus and go to church with your four sons? I don't think so. But they took me and we got on Bethel Baptist Church every Sunday morning. And I was between 3 and 4. And that's where it all began. I remember going into my Sunday school class, even at that age. I don't remember a whole lot of it, but I do remember, you know, being taught about Jesus and coloring and, singing the songs and getting back on Bethel Baptist Church bus and coming home. So that's where it began. It was instilled when I was very young. My parents or grandparents didn't attend church until I was in my teenage years. And, just things in life. There was 7 of us kids, so they were very busy. My dad had his own business with his brother, and so they were very busy. Not that it's an excuse by all means. And there was things in the family that kept them from going. Satan just dealt with them a lot, and he let it happen. And to get past that, they did start coming to church. We went to a Baptist church, Division Street Baptist Church, for many years. My dad's mom, Grandma Graves, she also attended there. A lot of my aunts and uncles was attending there, so that kind of helped, get the family. It's like a family congregation there. So we went to church there, and that's where I became the Lord's daughter at Division Street Baptist Church. So, and I was older. I was 17. I I was saved back when I was younger, probably 10, and we was going there at the time. And my youngest brother Jesse, I remember we had some type of social thing, and we were all in the basement at the church, and they were talking about Jesus and getting saved, and Jesse came up to me. We were close, and we're still close to this day. And he was like, "Come on, sister, we need to get saved." And I really didn't soak it in and comprehend it. I was just went along with it. So for a long time, I just kind of kept thinking I was saved, but I really didn't understand it. And then, I was way beyond understanding it by the time I was 17. But I was at a service, and they asked if everybody's head was bowed, and if anyone wanted to come to the Lord. I raised my hand.
And now, something that fascinates me was, so obviously we don't need to go into the stories of the brothers, but their brothers have their own demons, and so one of the crucial times you talk about Jesse. In Jesse's life, he comes out of prison, and me and Jesse became very, very close. Me and my uncle Jesse, any weekend that I had off, that's who I was hanging out with. And to know his past and to know where we all were for him in a crucial point. He is now management at the box factory that I used to work at. He he has the fruits of the labor that he's put in to let go of that lifestyle is shown. He's married. He told me he was going to be a bachelor the rest of his life. You know, I remember that as a kid. My uncle used to literally, it was a trailer. It was, I'm not talking double wide. I'm talking a camping trailer. One of my uncles, her other brother, let him live in it. It was a camping trailer. He was like, if you just stay clean, if you keep a job, I'll let you. So in Stratford, there's an RV park. And I remember that every weekend we would go, and he had a little TV that he set on a TV tray, and we would watch movie after movie and laugh and laugh. And to see that, and he vowed to let it go. But you talk about the four brothers were the one that brought you to Christ. As you see their lives unfold and what's happened to them through the years, the fact that they were the ones that brought you to Christ, do you ever use that as God is good and God does work in mysterious ways? Because what if they had that attitude when you were a kid and they didn't care about church? Then you wouldn't have had anybody. So you look at the lifestyles that they lead and the fact that what's happened to some of them. You know, like I said, we don't need to go into all that, but the fact that it was that core that brought you at a young age there, and you see what happened, does that ever cross your mind? Because
Okay.
it scares me to think about if I hadn't had parents and a family like you, what would have happened to me? Because like I have said before, not because I was scared of you guys, I was just afraid of punish. What was the punishment going to be? I didn't want people to I didn't want to disappoint you guys. I didn't want to do the wrong thing. So I didn't want that punishment. So I feared punishment. So to somebody, if I would have had free reins at a young age when I needed to be tightened down like I did, I think about that and it's like, man, God's great. Has that ever crossed your mind?
I can't say it really does because I believe that what's supposed to be God has a plan, and He had a plan.
Yeah, but that's what's crazy. You realize how difficult we say things are currently. You know, man, the thing life's
Yes.
just rough right now. But you think about each story, Zach's story, and all these testimonies. These people were in the right place at the right time, and it's like a bridge that gets built one shingle at a time. Like the next one's there for you. Like you look at this bridge and you don't know. I don't know who that next stepping stone is going to be tomorrow. You know,
Exactly.
you don't know, and I don't mean that in like death and all that. That's I'm not getting morbid with it,
Right.
but literally there is going to be somebody in each part of your life that is going to be the next building block. They're going to
Absolutely.
be God's put something there for you. And
Yes.
I don't think we realize sometimes how crucial those little pieces in life are. And that was just one of the things that I was just curious about was is that ever something that you're like, man, that God, that was just another
Yes.
boom, boom, boom.
Oh, definitely.
And so we'll go into like you talked about getting saved. So we'll talk about junior high, high school era now. So a lot of the times, um, our guest, if it's somebody who's yes, Christ has been somebody that's been held in my house crucial. ever since I can remember, usually it's the high school era, getting out of high school era. It's kind of like free reigns. I was told to get out. Now, I kind of know my grandparents, so like I know the lovingness and the caringness. So, um, the my point of view of them will maybe differ, may be the same from you. Unfortunately, I was younger whenever they passed, so like I have memories, but as a child, every memory is a good memory. So m- basically, whenever you're high school transitioning into, my grandparents were very hard workers. My grandpa, like you said, owned his own business. So hours, whenever you own a business, are going to vary. That's just part of owning the business. So,
Exactly.
um, but my grandma, very good cook. She was actually a cook for the school back in the day, back whenever they didn't have the microwave meals for kids, which I don't know if they're microwavable now or not. But so as you're transitioning in high school era, was college or anything like that a thought, or what was the thought process when you're in high school? What were you kind of gearing towards? Was it the work world? Were you excited about just taking off on your own? What was the mindset like?
Well, my mindset in high school, of course, I did pretty good in school. I can't talk anything about. I was being the first girl. I had four boys and then three girls, and I was the first girl, so I was kind of the platform. And I know we had reins on you and your sister, but we kind of had free reign, kind of a trial and error,
Raising each other.
kind of, yeah. Of course, the boys, I say boys, my brothers looked after me. Uh, 'Cause then it was like every 2 years there was another one. So I was the first one. So in high school, they didn't have reins on me. They didn't, you can't do this, you can't do that. We all had the same rules. You're to be home by 10 o'clock. And at that time, there was no cell phones, so you got to do a lot without them knowing anything. So, but I was the type, I was kind of afraid because, I mean, there was rules, you don't disrespect, you know, don't do anything bad. And I was the first girl, so it was kind of a trial and error for my mom and dad. So I was, I guess what people would say now is the good girl. I didn't party in high school. I mean, I had lots of friends. I didn't really do stuff. I wasn't a cheerleader. I wasn't the kilty. I knew my parents couldn't afford that. So I just never, I wanted to, but I never said anything. And that's okay. It's okay. Um, so I really wasn't pushed to want to go to college or anything like that. But as far as my grades in school, I would have had opportunity to pretty much have my college paid.
And at this time, I'm not trying to be funny at all, but I mean at this time, college, it's not necessarily viewed like it was for our generation at this time,
It
was it?
was. It really wasn't.
And so, and like I said, I'm not trying to be funny on that, but what was it industry? I mean, was the mindset industry at the time like working in
It was just working,
working was
just
the
getting a
mindset?
job.
Yeah. And was it because jobs were hard, or was it just because the mindset was work, work, work?
The mindset.
And so, as that's another important, key to this is, I mean, at this time, really, the only reason people are going to college is if they're wanting to be athletes, and if they're really pursuing something that is something that's college at the time. It's not. I think our generation, it was, bro, if you don't go to college, you're
Yeah,
a dummy.
you're
And
not gonna
so
amount
you
to
had
anything.
all of these college debt guys that are going there for the alpha, calpha, palpha,
Ye-
talpha, omega stuff,
right,
and all of that. And, so that way they've got a brand to put on themselves. That was kind of our generation. So
right.
your generation is you're basically you're going to be a housewife, or you're going to be working, housewife
Right.
working, housewife working.
And that was kind of my mindset. I mean, I had my dad, he was always wanting us to be us girls to have a good enough job that we could support ourselves. That was always implanted in me. He really wanted me to go into nursing. And because he was like, you'll always have a job, no matter where you go, you'll have a job.
And now, not to cut into our story, but the for your dad to want you to have a job for the longest time, you raised me and my sister. I mean, now I say that and I don't mean that little, because you had an in-home daycare, and so it was about, like, whenever Hannah was born and she was old enough to kind of do her thing, you went back to it. So to go to from the mindset of you're going to be a nurse to you, and I don't mean this in a belittling way, but you were a housewife. You were a very good mother, and so I don't mean that belittling, but was that something, were you ever like, man, I really want to kind of go to this nursing field, like this is something that I want to, or was it just kind of, man, I really enjoy this, and this is watching kids is kind of what I want to do? What was the mindset there?
Well, I always wanted children of my own, and it became very difficult. I was told that I would never be able to have children, and 4 years into trying, I was told I had a brain tumor. Not to be off the subject, but it will flow into it. Um, so when you're faced with something like that, you just don't really know what's going to be next. So I put my trust in the Lord, and it was a crazy time. I continued working. I continued doing life. Uh, and I think some people thought I was crazy because I trusted in the Lord. And He knew my heart. He knows my heart always. And the middle girl, Trish, your Aunt Trish, she was pregnant at the time, and they put me on some medication for the tumor. And uh, it made me sick. And she was pregnant at the time, and she was getting sick. And the Lord brought it to me to go get a pregnancy test. And I was thinking, crazy. And I did. I did what the Lord told me, and it was positive. And I was thinking, this is crazy. I have a tumor, and now I'm pregnant. And I was like, is this real? I think I probably did 8 or 9 pregnancy tests, and they were all positive. And when you're told you can't have a baby, but you've been praying on it and believing it, and then you're told you have a tumor, and I go and I tell people, this is this can't be real. I can't be having the tumor and taking this medication. It won't be good. And it's just very touching. So I called the doctor. I go in, and they immediately wanted to do a checkup on me. And I was already 18 weeks along, and that's when they told me I had the tumor. So I took it, and there was no tumor. They checked after I was pregnant and was replaced with you. So,
Get ready for those tissues, old bud.
do you remember what your question was to me? Because I forgot now.
Yeah, what no, I don't. Initially it was
Oh, okay, I do. So when I found out that I was pregnant and with having you, I wanted to
having the
be
it
it.
was the question, by the way, was what was your mindset from wanting to, you're being told, or your mindset was nursing, your dad said something about being a nurse, and
Yes,
then you end up being more or less a housewife, and not belittling that, but me and my sister watching us. So as you're doing this, what was your mindset changed from, hey, we're going to be a nurse, to working slash, oh, we're going to have, like, maybe, in-home daycare, which is still a job, but it was in-home daycare, so that was kind of cool because you were able to watch your kids.
absolutely.
So what was it, just because you loved kids so much that you continued with it, or was it because it was just something that seemed easier, and it was just kind of how life was at the time? That was the mindset of
Well, that
how things just were back then.
changed my whole heart. When I was told I couldn't have kids, and then the Lord brought me children, it just changed my whole heart. I wanted to be a mom so bad, and the Lord provided that. And I wanted to take care of my kids. I didn't want to send them to daycare. I could have, and I could have worked, um, but the Lord provided. Your dad helped with working. It wasn't easy. I mean, but the Lord provided, and He just kept providing, kept providing. So, with saying that, it just changed my heart when you go from being told and trying for years to have a child, and then you have one. It changes your whole heart. It did mine. I don't know for everybody, but it changed my heart. And I wanted to make sure that I raised my children. And I've always been one who absolutely adores children. And so to help provide for the family, I started the daycare so that I could keep you at home. And it was just my heart. And it didn't matter to me whether I went to college to be a nurse or anything else. My heart was to be at home.
And so, as this next part of this question, we're going to kind of lead into, like, the younger years, of which your relationship would just so happens to be with my dad. So we're going to talk about the beginnings of that. So this will involve a lot of me, obviously, because
No.
it's, I mean, kind of expected here. But this is the kind of the area that we'll talk about. So one of the things that interests me is, my dad is one who, he is, I love him to death. He instilled a very firm work ethic. He was somebody who, along with you, you are very clean. You are both of you are very proper. So for me to hear you say that as a kid, you were sort of the model for the first daughter. Um, Whenever it comes to the family, your side of the family is more redneck, more country, more. My grandpa was a very, very strong woodsman. He loved to hunt. He had beautiful crafted guns. My grandpa was very, 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 very talented at making guns. He loved making his own ammunition. So he was a very good woodsman. He was and an auto body.
Yes.
So to go to my dad sort of being the more preppy um, side, he still got along with them. But um, was there ever any grief with the family of, because I know as a kid that they would joke around with him, but my uncles I have a very strong sense of humor because I hung out with my uncles constantly, and at a young age, maybe it wasn't the best some of the things that they said. So, but
Oh, definitely
um,
not.
my uncle Ronnie has one of the best sense of humor, which that is what it is. But my uncle Jesse, he had an enlightened sense, and he was very funny and very very joking, but they gave my dad a hard time, pretty boy, and all of that stuff because my dad wanted nice things. He kept his things very nice. Anything that my dad had was to you treated it like it was brand new. And I remembered my dad getting things with rust on it, and he would use it and keep it and maintain it because it would be given to him. And that was one thing that I remember, and it's now coming to light to me that, you're given things sometimes, they may not be in the best condition, but God gives you things that you need in times, so you need to use those things. And it's not until now that I start seeing that you guys, that's what we never wanted for anything. So I know this is kind of elongated, but did you ever get lashback for that? Because I know they joked around, but when you joke about something like that, there's some kind of honesty to it. Did you ever see any lashback to that?
I I did while we dated, probably. Uh, yeah, I mean, because your dad, he was more of, like you said, he liked the finer things, you know. Um, so they would say, he, that your dad was, like you said, pretty boy, and so they would tease me a little bit about that. But your dad, I mean, he's a good man. And well, as you know, in fact, we was married for 23 years, and just
Vic's beating up on somebody over there. Somebody owes Vic some money, if you know what I'm saying. Forget about it. Forget about it.
but we just we had difficulty throughout all of our married life.
Oh, he wasn't perfect. I mean,
No, 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 no.
there was a time where I remember I didn't want to be around him. He was not perfect. He had anger issues. He was very difficult to deal with, very stubborn. He was very arrogant. I at a point in my life was very arrogant just like him. The sins of the father become the sins of the son. I was very cocky, but I was able to get humiliated, and it didn't steer me away from God. I think it
Right.
steered my father away from God. I think God humiliated him, and my father it scared him. I think it was able to turn me into not scorn, but hey, God, I don't really care. I realize now I'm just a regular person. I think it hurt my father, but that's a different story for a
It
different
is.
day. But to realize now that you had no reins as a kid growing up.
I didn't.
You instilled reins on me and my sister, and I'm very thankful for it, because it's like I said, if you hadn't put those reins on us, I would have been like my uncles, and I would have ran ragged. So to have reins on me, what was it that made you want to do that? What was it that made you realize that? Was it being the first sister and realizing, hey, I've got to set an example, so this is an example that I've got to set for my household, or what was the mindset there?
Well, the
And
mindset for me.
be, not to cut you off, but the beauty of being live is that we can get text messages and on audio and stuff like that. So one of our listeners, my beautiful wife Caitlin, said that she can't really hear you. So if you can hold your
Oh, I'm
mic up a little
sorry.
bit.
Okay. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Sneaking off to adjust volume over there. So go ahead. Sorry, I just wanted to throw
No,
that
you're
in there. That
fine.
way
Thank
it's
you.
a little easier and everybody
Sorry,
can hear you guys
Caitlin.
better. Go ahead.
Oh,
You-
go ahead.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
I would say that watching my older brothers throughout our growing up time is what made me not want to do the things that they did. I mean, none of us are perfect by all means, but just watching them in their lives, as much as I love them, um, I saw the things that they did, and knowing in my heart that things was not what they should be doing. Drugs, alcohol, just different things like that. It was not something that I wanted to be a part of. But it and the Lord, I mean, I know from the time they took me, on the Bethel Baptist church bus, I knew that I had something. There was a watch over me, and I could feel it, and I knew it, and just the Lord was always there, and watching, and the Lord was there with my brothers, but I did not want to be doing what they did. So maybe I wanted to be an example for my younger sisters, but I just didn't want to do what they did. I didn't want to be that in life. I wanted I wanted I wanted to work. I wanted to have kids. I wanted to be married, and I didn't want to be a drug addict, and I didn't want to be an alcoholic, because that runs in the family, and I just didn't want that.
When is it? Because I think I know you and Cindy's relationship, and Trish, your other sister, she's no longer with us. But what was being raised by your brothers? I have obviously seen you be. We hung out with Uncle Ronnie more. We hung out obviously with Uncle Jesse more.
Yes.
Uncle Richard, whenever he was around, that was, we've seen them more than, which Cindy was there, obviously, but that was
Right.
a relationship was that established later in life? Because it seems like as you're growing up in the household, your relationship's more with your brothers. I understand you're the oldest sister and you had an example to set, but I think Cindy was kind of more of a wild child. Trish was more of kind of like the last one, so she was kind of the baby, kind of, or was Cindy the baby?
Cindy's the
Cindy's the
baby.
baby.
Yes.
Trish, the wild child, kind of held a grudge, seemingly. Does that relationship come out later in life with your sisters? Because it's hear more of your stories about Uncle Ronnie, Uncle, Jesse, this
Hmm.
and this and this. So were you more of a, kind of hung out with your brothers more, and your sisters were kind of just a shadow in the back of your mind, and then they blossom as you're getting older, or was it just a full family oriented thing this whole time you're until you move out and create your own family?
Well, the I think us girls, um, well, Trish and Cindy were more closer, I guess, when we were younger, um, because they were the babies or whatever. And
And what's the age difference?
2 years there's between all of us, pretty much. I think me and Jesse are the two oldest boys. There's a year, a little over a year, and then Jesse and I, it's a little over a year.
So was it the case of every other raised every other? Is that kind of how it worked, or was it the one right in front of you kind of raised you? How did that work?
Well, I think my older brothers, they all kind of hovered over me because I was the first girl. Um, so I kind of hung out with them, so to speak. My oldest brother he got married at a very young age. He was 16. So he was out of the house at a very, pretty
And
early
he's
age.
always and I'm not talking bad about him. He's always been kind of one of the more distant. I mean, he's been around and he's been close, but he's also had his own thing. He had his
Yes.
own auto body shop.
Yes.
So he took off to do his own thing. He
Yes.
moved out to Willard to do that, Ash Grove area to do that. So it's not like he wasn't working. But he was one of the ones that was kind of more distant. So it was kind of that way
Yes.
from an early start.
Um, yes, but when he first got married, they were so young. I actually hung out with him and his wife Rita for many years. Then they had their first born was a son. His name's Richard as well. Richie is what we call him, and I babysat him for a long time. Um, so we stayed close for a long time. But there was always when he wasn't there around, Jesse and I, because we were the younger. After that, we were the two youngest at that time. So we hung tight with each other. I really didn't play with my younger sisters because I always had my brothers. They were always there for me.
And now what? Because it's interesting to me because there for a moment, and obviously when you're a kid, your memories are, your family's together. But my memories as that side of the family's gatherings was it was amazing because everybody was there.
Yes.
To go from a mom and a dad, you kind of have kids raising kids. I never seen my grandpa in that sort of not being huggy, kissy, lovey sort of. I'd never experienced that. You got to experience that side of it. What was it that shifted all that? What was it that turned the family gatherings into seeing Uncle Donnie, seeing Grandpa, seeing everybody hugging and kissing? What was it that brought that about? Because it seems like it was kind of not every man for himself, but it wasn't. Um, you said it yourself. Your brothers are the ones that took you to church.
Hmm.
So what was it that sort of shifted the mentality of Grandma and Grandpa in a way?
Um,
Or
the,
was it always? Were they always?
we have always. I mean, even to this day, and you know that uh, you see family on my side, you're gonna hug them and you're gonna kiss them.
Yeah.
That's the way we was raised. I mean, I know people look at us like we're just crazy, but that's how I have always, always, always remember. You just if my dad, your grandpa, when you walk into a room and taking you or Hannah at the time your whole face is going to get kissed, and you're going to be hugged the biggest hug you've ever had. That's just how we was raised. The whole side of my family is like that.
And so whenever whenever we were kids, that's one thing that I do remember. The family reunions that we would have at
Yes.
Ritter Springs and all of those fun things. And seeing that side of the family was pretty cool because whenever you had a family reunion, every one of them showed up. Like it was, you were like, I know, I've seen you before. Like
There's
outside of
it's
this,
huge.
yeah, like I've
We have a
seen you other
huge
places
family.
rather than here. So, and I remember being a kid, we would go to Grandpa's shop, and Uncle Ronnie would
Yes.
take us across the street to the Price Cutter,
Yep.
and get chips. So I've only ever known the loving side, and I hear stories from my cousins about this and this, and that is what it is. But I've always seen that side of it, and it was always so cool to be around that stuff because I was very shy as a kid. I only really liked a few people and opened up. You were one of them because you were my mother.
Right.
One of them was my cousin Kyle, and then the other one was on my mom's side of the family, my Aunt Trisha's cousin Robbie. He was very shy as well. So we just
Yes.
meshed very well together because we could kind of lean on each other in a room and we were fine. So I really enjoyed that side of the family because, like I said, I had Robbie, and I knew he was shy. Hey, I'm shy. We're gonna get something sparked up here. So as as you're starting your own family, as you've got in-home daycare, when is it? Because I know this. Hey, Ozark. Um, I know the side of it that is cool. Hey, we're going to Ozark next to Aunt Susie. We get a new house. Like
Mhm.
as a kid, you're getting a new house. It's brand new built. We got to live with, which is the house we own now. We got to live in the basement of that house for how many months?
Uh, 6 months.
But it was the best 6 months of my life because I had mom and dad in the basement and I had grandma and grandpa upstairs. And I loved hanging out with my grandma and grandpa, and I loved being around my mom and dad. My sister was a pain in my butt, but I loved pestering my sister. So like family is something that really I really do. Obviously I had my selfish part of my life, but me and my sister have a great relationship again.
Praise the Lord.
Yes, and but so as I remember it, everything about I was brokenhearted about my friends in Springfield, but everything else about Ozark was pretty cool. I get a brand new room, and I get to do whatever color I want in it, and it's got archways in it. Like this is awesome. So obviously there's that shifting mindset in Ozark. What is your mindset whenever this is going down? Whenever everything, I've never asked that because I know that like obviously building a new house is a big, they come out with studies and it's like an awful thing for marriages is building a brand new house. What is your mindset? Are you, because Springfield where we grew up, I loved, Sequoia, we were kind of in the heart.
Right.
It's not like we were too far away from Niangua. I mean, obviously you're a little bit more down, but
Yeah.
we weren't 4 hours away from
Right.
your mom and dad. But still, it's not any closer. But there's really not a whole lot in Marshfield and Niangua area. And dad would have had to have driven, X amount of miles for work, blah, 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 blah. But still, Ozark, new house, that's a lot for any marriages. But what is your mindset going in from in home daycare, Springfield, to okay, why Ozark? Why was Ozark chosen? I know my Aunt Susie obviously didn't live too
Yes.
far from there, which is my dad's sister.
And that's why.
And
That's
my
why.
Aunt Susie basically she owned her own in-home daycare, and she had a lot of money. There's a story there that we won't get into, but she had a very very massive house in Ozark. She did very well for herself. She owned multiple daycares around the Springfield area. So she had 10 or 15 acres in Ozark. Ozark at this time wasn't what it is now. Ozark was
No.
on the brink of
exploding.
It hadn't started yet, but it was getting ready to
Yes,
be there.
it was.
But her house is right off. Well, I don't say was right off of 65 as you're going towards Branson and Ozark. Massive house, and she had gifted my father and my sister a colt.
Yes.
Was that the reason for moving out there, or had the colt not been gifted yet?
It hadn't been gifted at that time. Your dad wanted to move out there, and that's why we moved out there. They had a new subdivision area going up. Your Aunt Susie had already been living there for a few years, and your dad liked it there. We visited there with her and her family multiple times, and he liked it there. And I just felt, he was the one that was the biggest breadwinner, so I went along with it. You just and then as far as the building the house thing, I've heard horror stories.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like that. It went very well. We had a great builder, and he went with whatever we wanted. So, and we had a place to live. It's not like we had to rent somewhere or anything like that. We had a place to be, but when you're in a basement with your two children, and we had a Labrador at the time.
And
Luke.
that cat was crazy, bro. Luke was on another level. Like he was well, no, he was older at that
He
point.
was a little
in time.
older. Yeah, he was.
But I remember whenever we got him, and we were so excited, and that poor dog, he just wouldn't listen. Just wouldn't listen. I remember being scared for that dog. I would come home from school, and I would just cry because I would see something chewed up, and I was like, he's getting one tonight, boy. He is getting one tonight. Like, Dad just did that lattice. Dad and Mom just stained that lattice, and you chewed that. You are getting one tonight. Like, crying for him, boy. Just like, run, get on out of here. But so whenever you're in Ozark, and all of this stuff is, the horses is new. I shouldn't say new because your background as a kid, there was obviously a little bit of horses involved. I mean,
Actually, there wasn't.
family members didn't have horses and
No.
stuff.
No.
So you go from never having horses,
Yes.
and my father obviously going from Z71 topless, polished up wheel car, slicked up hair, next fancy thing every day, softball player, tanned, to all of a sudden horses. And I'm like,
He went
Yeah,
yee
that's
real
what
quick.
I was like. What?
I'm like, bro, we watched Triple H and Stone Cold Steve Austin wrestle in the basement the other day, and we're going to go wrangle up horses, bro? What are we doing? Come on. So this is, obviously, when the house is being built, the barn's built not too long after that. So your
Yes.
life is being not only introduced, you're kind of out in the country. We went from a neighborhood of neighbors that were, I loved the neighborhood. I
Yes.
mean, I remember as a kid, we still had the era. Even though you guys had us on reins, you would let me go to Bradley Perkins' house until I would
Yes.
stretch the limits of that a little too far and go a little bit further than what I should. But you would walk us. We had a peaceful, very good neighborhood. We could ride the streets. We had a basketball goal underneath the light. We would play basketball with the neighborhood kids. And you would later, ironically enough, our neighbors that lived behind us in
Yes.
Springfield, you would watch their daughter in Ozark because they would move to Ozark, and they were our
Right.
neighbors as well. So pretty cool story there. But
Yes.
so you go from this community, obviously your family community, Ozark. My dad's family, they are one that they love you and they'll be there for you if you need help. Call them, they'll answer it, and they'll be there. But you may not get a hug. You'll you won't get a kiss.
No.
But they love you and they'll see you next time. We'll see you next time. All right. Don't be gone too long now. That's their thank you. That's their we love you. That's their come back. So to them isolated, I'm kind of that way too. I kind of like my own space. I like to have my own area. I
Right.
get that from my dad. um a social butterfly, I don't necessarily mean it like that, but going from a community where you can talk, where you have communication, and
Right.
being an in-home daycare, it's not like you had that work atmosphere where you could talk, but
Exactly.
the mothers would come to pick up their kids.
Hmm.
You kept so busy with taking us back and forth with our appointments and our stuff like that. So it's
Exactly.
that space was being filled.
Yes.
So you go from that to Ozark, and hey, by the way, um, we don't really know anybody out here,
Mhm.
so there's no networking for watching kids. You are just a stay-at-home mom.
Yes.
And during the summer, I believe, of the first year we were there, you worked for Jenny.
Yes.
So you attempted the go out into the field and work because you were staying at home, basically just us, me and Hannah, and
Hmm.
we were at each other's throats all the time. So um, you kind of isolated. You're away from the neighbors. Really weren't they were few and far between at that time
Yes.
because it's a new subdivision.
Yes.
So what is it? What is it that who? What is it? Is that whenever you reach out and you're like, I've got to have a job. So that's why you go. What was the starting point of your reasoning for getting a job with Jenny?
Just, I mean, it was, yeah, I needed to work. Um, and being out there as far as we were, uh, I didn't really think that having a daycare there, plus having it as long as I did, and then with you and your sister being in school, you know, having the day, I I needed to do something to bring some money in, and that's when your aunt Susie, they had, and I think they still do, um, the business of helping people find jobs. So they asked me if I would come to work for them. So I did, and it was it was good, but then I always had the worry of you and your sister because I would have to go a little bit before Yins could get on the bus, and you would have to stand up there in the weather, and it made me feel bad. And then, I mean, the knowing the owners of the company that I worked for, they was always go, be there by the time you guys would get off the bus so that I could pick you up. And there was a few times that I couldn't, but I felt bad. And it always weighed heavy on me. So when when we lived in Springfield and the people behind us, we kept in touch with them because they moved to Ozark as well. And whenever I found out she was going to have a baby, she got a hold of me and she's like, "What are you doing now?" And I was working for your aunt, and but that was weighing on me, leaving you guys up there at that bus stop and just not knowing. It made me feel bad. So she she was wanting me to do daycare again, of course. She was like, "Oh man, I sure wish you was." So I just thought about it and thought about it. And then one of my cousins, Jennifer, Uncle Donnie's daughter, worked with another Jennifer who was also from Ozark, Ellie's mom. And they needed a daycare. So my cousin Jennifer was telling her about me, and it just all, the Lord brought it all together.
And one of my favorite things, and um, Ellie and Taylor were the two kids' names that she was babysitting. They became huge pillars in my life because I was kind of a teen whenever all of this is getting started. So I'm getting off of the bus, and it's funny because as a kid, and I would like to apologize for this publicly, you make the comment of, "Hey, I felt awful for leaving you at the bus stop." I was so ungrateful as a kid through a period in my life where you would get mad because you're like, "They don't love me. Why aren't they coming to get me?" And it's like, bro, they're trying to provide for you. Like, it's things that I look, at Willow now whenever you get home from a day and you're tired and you're like, I just, but you made that comment, and I would just like to apologize for taking that for granted because as a kid, there were so many things that we had that were blessings that I don't think other people had. And that was one of them. Was we had, it wasn't very, I would say it was a quarter of a mile walk.
Yeah, probably a little bit further, but it was hilly.
It was hilly, but I would walk to Alex and Blake's
Yeah,
house
you
with no
did.
problem. And
You
I would
did.
even get on a bike, a heavy bike, and ride it up hills through ditches and made
Yes.
my own path eventually from the neighbor's house because we would just walk it so much. So it's not like it hurt me to walk that. It was just I took that for granted. I knew that I had two vehicles accessible to the family, and I'm like, bro, one of these can't come by here and pick us up. Like, I'm an out of shape gamer kid. Like, I don't want to be walking. And here's my sister talking with anybody and everybody.
Yes.
She's just happy, to be not in school and out and about and outside. But that was one thing that helped us, that helped me, was Hannah changing as she used to be pretty
Oh,
unbearable. My sister was
yeah.
very difficult, and when we moved, she laughs about it now because I can't to see my
Oh,
sister
she
now.
will tell you.
Ooh,
She will tell you.
ooh,
She will say, I was horrible.
a badger, old bud. You could wait. She loved to sleep. Sleeping was her. She could get 14 hours of sleep
Yeah.
and not wake up once. So my sister loved her sleep, and it killed me during Christmas because Christmas she got her 10 hours of sleep, and we waited for Hannah to sleep because if you
Yeah.
didn't, what, what, she was just mean and hateful. And
That is exactly what she looked like.
but so she was a crucial part of my life whenever we moved to Ozark because that's when she sort of blossomed into
She
this
did.
friendly, chatty Kathy that she is now. And for those of you that don't know, my sister followed the nursing field that my
She
mom
did.
did, or that my mom was talking about earlier. My sister is an amazing nurse. She works in the pediatrics,
Yes.
but her bubbling personality kind of happened out at a crazy time.
Yeah. It
My
did.
father is kind of like me in a sense. He's more, lean back. He's more studies the crowd. He doesn't like big major events. He would rather be at home. So to have a daughter that kind of has that bubbling personality, but you had me as sort of a mama's boy, was it, I know you said as a kid, or when we were kids you didn't like leaving us at the bus stop, so that weighs heavy on your mind. But as you take on these two kids, Ellie and Taylor, which they were babies at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and then you had me and Hannah, was there ever a mindset of I've taken more than I can handle with all of this? Or was that a perfect amount for you to be able to balance keeping busy time and then waiting for us so that way you could still get us and you could still maintain the lifestyles? Because my sister ran ragged there for a while
Yes.
with basketball and with rodeo and all of that stuff, which dad was a big part of the rodeo and the
Right.
basketball. So he kind of held that. But me, I really didn't have a whole lot of events. I hung out with friends, so
Yes.
you would cater me around to that. But as far as like sporting events, I wasn't a real. I loved baseball. I loved the idea of it. I knew I wasn't going to be good at it, but I
Right.
loved watching it. I loved the atmosphere of it. Um, I've never had the aspirations of being an
Right.
MLB baseball player, but Dad did that for us, and you catered. You had to take us here and there and watch this and this. Was 4 kids, and was that good, or was that
It was because, like you said, your sister was so busy with all kinds of stuff at the time, but I wanted to make sure, with her being so busy, that you had someone on your side. Does that make sense?
yeah?
Um, so I needed for me and for you to make sure that you was covered and you had someone on your side to take you to do. You was you was you liked the idea of the basketball and the baseball, and but yours was more like to hanging out with your friends,
Social event, yeah.
and that was okay. That was okay with me. But your dad was very serious about
Very
it,
serious.
and I wasn't. And it,
And I
it
wasn't either, and that kind of
no,
frustrated him because I wanted both of us to win. Like, if there's a way that any way a game could end in a tie
yeah,
and both of us be the winner of it, like that's what I wanted to
Oh,
do.
that drives
I'm
me
just not.
insane. No.
I'm not very competitive, and so like that's what's funny is like whenever people ask me if I'm a Chiefs fan or a Cardinals fan, I am because that's my hair. That was my. I'll never not be a Cardinal fan. It doesn't matter how bad they are.
right.
That I have memories with my grandpa watching Cardinals games that I'll never have, and that was what it was about for me, was watching it and listening to him yell at the umpire about a bad call. That was more funny to me and more entertaining to me. That's what I miss. I'm not going to start my rant about baseball and them shortening everything. But anyways, we'll go back. So as we kind of I sorry about getting off topic there.
You're okay.
But you talked about how I remember being excited about going shopping at thrift malls.
Yes.
I remember we had one family vacation at Branson, and it was an intertwined. It was the Bass Pro that they give
Oh
you when
yeah.
you're walking through.
Don't do that.
No, do it. That was one of my favorite memories as a child. I had it was the start of my skate phase, and I
True.
will forever be in debt to my skate phase. I love it. Those are my favorite memories. But so we go to this family event, and it's a timeshare holder thing for Big Cedar.
No.
So we get to the Radisson, and we had fun because we made fun of Dad and Hannah for being homebodies, and they wanted to be back in the hotel room, and we
Yep.
were like, "This is a family, like we want to ride go karts and stuff." So they left early because I
They
can't.
went home.
They went home like the night we stayed there one night, and then the next night they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna go home." We stayed and went to the Tanger Outlet Mall, and it was we went thrift shopping all day, and we
We
spent
did.
like, I, I mean, I don't know what it was, but you would go with my mom and my aunt Cindy, and you could bring $5 and walk away with a school year's full of clothes. That was just whenever they would go to Kansas City and go Christmas shopping, you knew
You were gonna get
you're
something when they come
getting a
back.
good haul.
Well,
So
your sister one time, she was at your Aunt Cindy's, and just kind of an overlay of, I was a thrifty shopper, and it was winter time, and all the kids' coats was laying out there, and she grabbed everybody's coat. Your sister did, and she walked into the living room. My sister was telling me this, and she said she took all these coats and laid them down there, and she said, I got all this stuff for $2.
my sister though would one year almost cost us Christmas. One year she peeped on the Christmas presents
Oh,
that were in the closet, and my mom said, "I'm gonna take these back." And my sister made the comment, "That's fine because there's nothing that I liked anyway." And my mom was like, "All right, I'm taking them back." And I was like, "No, no! What'd you say that for? You could have said." But that was my sister's attitude. Like
Yeah.
that was whenever I
She
say
was
she
terrible.
was hateful. She didn't care. She was mean and hateful, and so like whenever she said that, I was like, "Oh no." But so to go from the lifestyle of, you know, going back into the babysitting, and you had before those two, it was Caitlin and Drew, right? Caitlin
Yes.
Messina and Drew.
Actually, Caitlin was in the process of, well, yes, when we was moving, she at the time that we stayed at your grandma and grandpa's, I think I watched her a little bit there. But then when we moved, Shelley and Joe lived in Stratford, Missouri,
Hmm.
and Shelley drove all the way to Ozark just so that her daughter could stay with me. It's it's just in a mother. It's like you got to have somebody that you can trust. And bless her heart, with all that the highway um, traffic, I finally told her, because at that time I think Caitlin was 3. I think she was 3. I said, she's going to be old enough, if you want to take her to preschool, because Shelley was a mess by the time and it was so much highway time for her. And by the time she got off work and drove all the way there and got all the way back to Stratford. So, yeah, but yes, it was Caitlin and Drew that I had.
And so whenever you have Caitlin and Drew, that's kind of two's your number. So we go to,
Well, actually, I had more than Caitlin and Drew because I generally usually had 4. There was, because I had Terry and Steve's. There was always family members having kids, and I would have, or Matt,
I just
Matt and
assumed
Kyle.
it was just family hanging out. Like I didn't know it was paid babysitting. I just assumed cousins was coming over to hang out, which I mean probably was the case. I don't know, but as another thing that you mentioned, Steve and Terry, Matt and Kyle. Me and my cousin Kyle are very close. Me and my cousin Kyle obviously adapted the same relationship as what my dad's side of the family has taken, which is I love you, I'm here for you. We talk, we text every once in a while. We used to work together, so we would talk all the time.
Right.
But me and Kyle being very close, so there is a little bit of that on my dad's side, but for the most part, my loving nature comes from my uncle's. I mean, my uncle kiss you on the lips. He doesn't care. He really doesn't care.
That's just the way
That
we
was
was
how
raised.
he was raised. And people will, at work, seen me do that because me and my uncle used to work in the same place. They'd see that and they were like, "Ew, what are you doing? Who is that?" And I'm like, "My boyfriend." "What do you mean?" "It's my uncle. Come on, leave me alone." I mean, like if that bothers you, I'm sorry. I mean that's just how we were raised.
Right.
So, that side of the family sort of, we'll talk about the big elephant in the room, which is the divorce.
Mhm.
And I've grown up enough now to realize what it is. I understand the belly of the beast. I get
Exactly.
all of this stuff that goes on in life. So the unavoidable is, we'll just start, there. I remember my own thing because as I turn 18, I have girls on my mind, and I had the
Right.
girlfriend at the time that I would later work for her dad, and
Right.
Taryn. So Taryn kind of, took over 2 years of my life there for a while, which then I started working for her dad, and I kind of went into my little, selfish phase, which is about the time that the divorce starts to go down. So,
Right.
you go to watching kids isolated. I know losing my grandpa
Mm.
didn't help things out. and not on to mention my grandma passed before that, which we lived in
Yes.
Springfield when that happened. So I seen a major change in you when that happened. I sit back and because I was a very visual kid. I wasn't if I really get to know you, then I'll get lost in a party with you and we'll talk and I'll forget all about that. But if I don't know anything, I'm very visual. And one of the
Right.
things that I noticed was family that was close starts to dissipate. And so we no longer, whenever my grandpa passed, me and my uncle Jesse were very close.
Right.
But for the most part, family starts to deteriorate at this point. Does that weigh heavy on you in the marriage, or is that just sort of what was it that was? Because I know my father, I know the situation, but your side of the story, what was it that was like, man, this is just, it was meant to be.
Mhm.
I'm okay with this, all of that process.
Well, I guess I'd have to start to say,
And I'm not. It's
You're-
like I said. I'm not saying it's just you.
Oh, I know
don't.
that.
I'm not. It takes two to tango.
It
so I was
does.
just saying your side of the story. I
No,
know
yes,
because there is,
exactly.
like I said before, there was my side of the story. So this is just.
Just to.
I'm not saying at all. What was your reason for getting?
No.
What was your reason
No,
for?
no, no,
I'm
no,
not,
no.
I didn't mean it like that. Come on, tell me right now. That's not what I meant. It was.
No.
Because I know myself. Just whenever you put a lot of heavy burdens on yourself and you're a yes
Correct.
person, I get that. I mean, my father is a very big yes person. You are a very big, you like to make people happy. You're a server.
Right.
That's why you greet at the front.
Exactly.
So you're a very big server. So you serve to make
Yes.
people happy. And in doing that, I know the reason a lot of it was that you could talk about the Caitlin thing, but she was late. So there were events that we would have to go around because there would be another child because she would have to drive from Stratford.
Exactly.
So that was another big factor in it. That weighs heavy on family time. And my father was a provider. So, I mean, as much as we had nice things, my father liked nice things. So my father was a very at-home person. My mom is a person that goes from family-oriented, neighborhood oriented. Now we're out desolated. Here's some horses to feed your time. I know you're not a horse fan, but we're going to go to horse events. So you need to make horses part of your life. That's not you. You're being put in a culture that you don't want to be in. I understand that now. It took me time to realize I was very selfish. I was very stubborn. I was a crybaby. And selfishly, I was like, you did that to hurt me. Now, as a person, I realize there's a breaking point.
Yes.
And I was fortunate enough that God was able to slap me in the face early enough in life that I was able to realize, hey, it takes two to tango in everything.
It does.
So with that being said, I don't want it to seem like I've taken the spotlight and then put it right here and been like,
Right.
what did you do wrong?
Yeah.
I know it takes two to tango, that's why. So go ahead. I'm sorry about that.
You're okay. Your father and I, we pretty much had separate lives, even in Springfield. You know,
He was very selfish. He did what he wanted to do when he wanted to do it. He was a provider.
He was
First
a
and
provider.
foremost, he was a provider. But my father wanted something, my father got it. Whether it was money, whether it was, he would volunteer. He was a worker. He would, I'm not saying that he wasn't, but
And he knew the Lord,
yes,
and that was in our home. You know, that was instilled in the home. He knew the Lord, and whether it was because I was at home in home daycare, I was ready to be out and about and socialize, and he was a homebody. We just had separate lives for many, many, many years, and I lost my mom when we was in Springfield, and I tried to help my dad because he knew nothing. He didn't know how to do the bills because my mom died in her sleep, and it was traumatic. Um, so
But the best, like, some of my favorite childhood memories are Friday night. We would leave.
yes,
We would go to Grandpa's. We would get a bag of cashews and a bag of dinner mints, and we would pick. It was either a very long movie or two shorter movies, and we would get down there just about the time sun would set, and we would mix the bowl, and we would all sit down in the living room, and we would watch either two like hour and a half movies or one very long movie. It was usually Lonesome Dove or a
yeah,
John Wayne movie. So that's kind of my fathom with older westerns kind of comes in because that was a big part of
that was part
you
of the
had to help your
healing.
dad. Yeah,
Yes,
you
I
had to
did.
help your dad.
So we're not just gonna skip over the fact that you mix cashews and dinner mints together.
Try it.
And I gained probably 15 pounds on that. And then I was like, oh my gosh.
I used to love Grandpa because generally which he had, for those of you that are familiar with Springfield, his shop was very close to Hammond's Field, baseball
Okay.
field. He
Yes.
was just off of St. Louis, so that price cutter that's there, his shop was right across from it.
Yes.
He lived Niangua, so if you're headed towards Lebanon and you reach Marshfield, you've basically reached. So my grandpa drove from there to Hammond's baseball field every day, um, in a 19. Was it an? What year was his Chevy Classic truck? That big rough driving,
Oh, the one that,
big red.
oh, I don't, I'm not sure, actually.
80. It was an 80 something. It was a classic. It was the C10,
Yeah, talk about a
regular
gas
cab, long
guzzler.
bed. And but anyways, so whenever we would get home from school,
Yes.
we would pack our bags, and me and you, because 90% of the time Hannah had a rodeo to go to
Yes.
or basketball tournament.
Yes.
So we would go to Grandpa's,
Yes.
and we would either go to, they had my favorite chicken strips, Country Kitchen. And then whenever it went out, there was that other diner that moved in down there. But anyways, and we would get dinner mints and cashews, and that was like our nighttime snack. Was, we would sit down and watch a movie and pass that around. But I remember those times very vividly because it's
Right.
like you said, Grandpa didn't know.
He didn't know.
He was the bread maker. That was kind of my mindset. Is like I'm working. If you do what you want with it, like it's. If and Brooklyn's fine with that. Brooklyn was like, hey, I don't mind doing the bills, and I'm like, good, because auto pay is my favorite thing. I don't have to worry
Right.
about talking to anybody, but it's also, you don't know when they're swiping that from you, and it's like would rather not deal with people, so I'll take that for.
Well, at that time, I mean, it's just you pay by check.
Yeah.
You get your checkbook out and you make out all the bills and get the stamps and you got to mail it off.
And
And
now,
thank the Lord for technology where we don't have to do that anymore.
and the funny thing about my grandpa is he, I think, for as much as, and obviously, like you said, there's a perspective for everybody, but the way to see that he loved grandma and the way that he hugged, the way that it affected him, he bounced. I know there was a period where, that I've heard stories of, there was a period there, but as you're seeing him progress, as you're seeing, him being better, obviously never fully healed from it. He wanted to see grandma as bad as possible, but
Oh,
to see him, I never really felt like he didn't stop loving us. You know what I mean?
yeah.
He
Oh,
always still.
absolutely
So
not.
was there ever a time whenever you were like, okay, I feel better, or did you still feel like mother hen because you were the first daughter?
Always felt like mother hen. Um, but then when he remarried, I knew it was time to step back because it was just I knew and I mean, in my heart, you love God first, and then your spouse, and then your family. So he embarked in another spouse, so it was time for me to back away. And I had my family, and like I said, we had separate lives, and that made it even more separate. And I lost my mother, and then less than a year, he gets remarried, and that's a whole new story. So we had had separate lives for many years, and then after helping him along and just going on through life, he, years, I guess, your grandma was gone 6 years. We found out he had cancer, and then 1 year to the day, he passed away, and I lost.
Tissues. Oh, you're fine.
I lost so much of me. I I was a daddy's girl, most definitely. And to have him hug me, at times when I needed it was gone.
So would you say that that relationship with Grandpa extended the marriage? Do you think if you hadn't had somebody to care for and somebody to fill that void, do you think it just extended that in a sense? Because ever since we moved to Ozark, I do feel like we were two separate households. There was Hannah and Dad,
Yes.
and I'm not holding grudges or anything, but that was just how it was. Hannah did so much with Dad, had to take her to this and
Right.
this and this,
Right.
and you were a stay-at-home mom, and then you had daycare on top of that, so you
Right.
couldn't just, yeah, you could put all the kids in the car seat because we did it multiple times during
Exactly.
the summer. We would go to the zoo, so it's not like we were stuck at the house, but it's not very easy to uproot four kids and just do, especially whenever, I mean, for the most part we had the vehicle, but at that time you had the Grand Prix. So I mean, yeah, we could accommodate for that, but it wasn't as comfortable as what.
Right.
So, um, but so you go from that. Do you think that? Do you think that that extended it, or do you think that that helped fill a void long enough? I shouldn't say it extended it because that's kind of a cruel way to put it. But do you think that that was a filler in that void in that time? Because I mean, like I said, whenever I was giving my testimony, we were very close. I mean,
Right.
there wasn't a time where I wasn't attached at your hip. Um,
It's
and
true.
my aunt
That's
Cindy, I
true.
mean, that's what. Whenever I talk about my aunt Cindy and stuff, you two were always together. I was always with you. I was always with you too. I
Yeah.
was always. I felt like Father Hen because Dalton and Amanda and Hannah. So I got this to experience this not father like role, but kids, babies never bothered me.
Right.
But yes, you do have all of this stuff. I'm not saying you were just a sit at home mom that just
Oh, I
you
know.
had stuff. The house was immaculate. It always the house you could any time in a house that my mom and dad have lived in, you could show that house the next day and not have to worry about it. The floors are always polished. You've always kept a very clean home. We have always been fed and all of that good stuff. We ate
Right.
dinner every night. So, yes, you have your family, but at the same time, it's sort of a disconnect. Was
Right.
that a filler and a void for that point in time, or do you felt like God used you for your dad in that moment? Which is it, or is it both? Do you feel?
I mean, I know the Lord, which I've always been one to help. I've been a helper. I've always been the one that brought the family for family gatherings after mom passed away. Um, so I just I just felt like I was the person that the Lord needed to put there to help him because he needed help. He didn't know any part of life without my mom. I mean, they'd been married for 40 plus years and, you know, he didn't know. I mean, with his own business, he knew all of that, but he didn't know where she kept the bills at. He didn't know what went where. He was traumatized. We were all traumatized.
And there was, I mean, you could definitely tell there was an emptiness in him. I mean, he was still cordial, but you could tell
Oh yeah.
there was a difference in him. I mean, he was definitely um the laugh and the smile and the because my grandpa had very, very blue eyes. Um you could tell that he
It
wasn't
was
the same,
cloudy. Yeah.
but he was still cordial. He was still, like I said,
Absolutely.
I don't ever remember a family get together where your face wasn't raw because everybody had mustaches and it prickled your face and you were just
Yes.
like, "Oh man, like okay, we're done. Can we go to the other family reunion side now?" Like my dads don't kiss you. Like you don't have to worry about mustache wears on your face, but
Yeah.
like that was my uncles give me a hard time all the time. What are you doing with that stuff below your lip, boy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mustaches was definitely how it was. That
Yeah.
was the figure in that household was a mustache. But so like you go from being the caregiver.
Yes.
Obviously that the Carol story is another story. It is what it is. But there was a lot of and I don't want to seem like I'm calling you out, but on that side of the family, there was a big grudge that was held there.
There was.
And the devil, the enemy, definitely rooted himself very deep whenever it
Yes.
came to the death of that, or the death of my grandpa.
Yes.
Um, the long story of it is basically my grandpa thought that he could trust this woman, and so he didn't have a deed in any specific way. Um,
Well, as far as the deed to the house, he had all of us kids on it and her. But anything else, he had told all of us, including her, what he wanted and trusted she would do it, and it didn't happen. But like you said, that's it. It's not here or there, but a lot of hurt happened.
but I mean, it is a very particular, important part of the story because there is a lot of that would weigh heavy on anybody. I want to
Sure.
talk about that for those that are listening right now. When it comes to grudges, it's very important whether it's, and as silly as it may seem that you would say you held a grudge against God. Zach, you said that. You made that comment. It's not the fact that God owes you an apology, it's the fact that you held a grudge against God and you need to let it go. Not because God was in the wrong and you need to be the better person. It's just because God doesn't owe you anything. So when it comes to a grudge that you hold against God, you're not really you have no legal right to hold a
Exactly.
grudge against God is my
No.
is my saying there, but you still may feel like God owes you something for some reason. I'm not saying that's this case, but I am saying when it comes to grudges, and it was heavily rooted then.
Yes.
That didn't help because you had family members, and I've seen it on my dad's side as well, where money becomes an issue. Well, why didn't we get this part of it, and we want this part of it, and then you have those who are just honestly traumatized by the whole situation, and
Correct.
that becomes another thorn and another dagger in the side that weighs heavy on a person's mind on top of a marriage where you have two separate lives and you have all of this stuff on top of that, weighing on top of you, that I just want to bring that part of it to light. I'm not saying that. I just understand that's what I've come to understand. That's what the Lord's brought to my mind is you have you've gone through rough, difficult times as well,
Multiple things. Yeah.
and the I haven't been through near that. And as far as mental strain for me, and there's been times where I've broken down, and there's times where I've realized I can't do it, this and this and this. So I've been able to give it up. When is it that this just all of this comes to be? And because I know, like I said, I spent a lot of time with you, and I know the you before Grandpa, and I know the you after Grandpa. I was very close with you, so I understand these two difference. Um, and I know, not trying to be funny, but you also, for those of you, I'm not. I don't think this is going to hurt. You did have to have a hysterectomy as well.
Yes.
So there was that you had going on.
Yes.
You had me being the little stinker that I was, getting into the car accident, and I could have very well easily died.
Yes.
So you have this distraught teen in his blossom, in a sense, who is in his sort of going to do whatever he wants to phase. You have a daughter that is sort of rebellious against you because she knows dad is going
To be on her
to
side.
be on her side.
Yeah.
And you know that my father is like me. He doesn't like confrontation. I love my dad to death, but he does not like confrontation. It's not his suit. He's very, oh, okay, all right, well, yeah, we'll get something done. And he doesn't mean wrong by it. He's just non-confrontational. I experienced that as well. I had to get over that. That was one of the things that he blessed me with. Thank you, Father. I love you. But so you have all of this going on, and next thing you know, I'm graduated. I'm doing my own thing. I disconnect from you
Yes.
because I have that freedom. I have that opportunity. I have that availability, right? I'm in the big boy world. I'm working 40 plus hours at Lambert's. I'm not really hanging out with you. I'm hanging out with my girlfriend in my free time. Whenever I'm not hanging out with my girlfriend, I'm hanging out with Grandma and Grandpa on the weekends. So I'm disconnecting from you. And your daughter is sort of necessarily more connected to dad. She was a tomboy from heart, anyways.
Yes, she was.
So she was a daddy's girl to start.
Yes.
And so now you have babies that you're watching, but you don't have your babies.
Mm-hmm.
You no longer have your dad. You no longer have, because at this point I'm not hanging out with my uncle as much anymore.
Right.
So we're not every Friday night and every Sunday meeting up with each other because you're coming to pick me up. We're not eating dinner. The brothers' hearts harden up. We're going our separate ways. We're not a family like we were. When is it that because I remember days whenever I was just like, I can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just like, I can't do it. When was that, and what was that like? For people who are going through all of that, what's advice that you would give them to help them and let them understand it'll work out? You know what I mean? I guess because
Trust
there's
in the Lord. Trust in the Lord. I was going to James River, and at that time, with you, you wasn't going. Your dad wasn't going. Your sister wasn't going, but I was going alone, and I did that a lot. And not to make you feel bad at all, because that's just that
well,
was a
I
part
was
of life.
working weekends. I mean,
No,
Yes.
feel bad. Feel
well,
bad.
no, I mean the whole thing of it is my free time was during the weekdays because I worked during the weekends.
Yes.
So the weekdays I got to hang out with my girlfriend because she was a senior at the time. I
Right.
had just graduated. So
Life had changed.
I mean, I didn't have a car when I first started working.
Yeah.
My mom gave me a ride until I got my driver's license, and then I was able to use her car to go to work if I had to eventually. And then I drove my dad's truck a couple of times, but it wasn't like we had everything we needed. Um, but we were definitely taught respect. We were definitely taught you need to have something before we just give you. We need to
Right.
understand that you're going to appreciate it.
Exactly.
And there was value in that, and that's one of the things that I appreciate. And it's funny because whenever you go to your core values and you, without realizing it, you want to keep things cleaner. You appreciate things more.
Right.
Whenever you get in your selfish phase and all you think about is yourself, I look back at my vehicles and I'm like, man, I remember when I got my wheels on my truck and I loved them, so I kept that thing so clean. And then I got selfish and I spent more time worried about myself. And the next thing you know, I got gum in the truck and I don't even care. I just leave it. Back then, I used to chew tobacco. So whenever I would tip my spit bottle over, instead of hurry and spraying it and cleaning it up, you just leave it. You tend to just go to darkness and you
Yeah.
tend to just. Was there ever a time? Because I would say myself, I know my troubles. I had my selfish moments, my poor, pitiful me moments.
Mhm.
Did you ever have those, or were you just so busy that you had no time for those? Because I know what it's like to be busy with a newborn and try to keep up with
Mhm.
with just work.
Right.
And Brooklyn does an amazing job taking care of Willow. She carries the
Yes, she
brunt of
does.
Willow. She is an amazing mother. I couldn't imagine kids doing activities and then on top of that you mix in babies with it because
Mhm.
you're watching babies.
Right.
So you don't have a whole lot of time to
Feel sorry for
self
yourself.
mourn until there's lonely moments.
Yeah.
And it's easy to have lonely moments when you live in a house in Ozark where you don't want to talk to the neighbors
Mhm.
because they're gossipy older neighbors and stuff. But I love Patty to death. But the thing is you're out there alone. So what's the
Yes.
mindset? When is it that you were like, I can't?
When, yeah, when your children have pretty much grown up and you were doing your thing, your sister's doing her thing with your dad, but you were old enough, and then when you got your vehicle, when we got you the first car, and you was able to, go on your own. Um, I still had Ellie and Taylor, but they was turning 5 and about to go to kindergarten. So when they went to kindergarten, then I was, out just wondering what am I going to do?
How traumatizing is you're raising a baby. I mean, I understand it's somebody else's, but you get emotionally attached to this.
I still am
Emotionally,
connected with
yeah.
both
I
of
mean,
them.
you still Facebook friends
Yeah.
and you still they come over the summer, they hang out. What is emotionally, did that affect you as well? Was that just another thing where you were like, this is another sign?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, of course it's emotional. It's all of it. I mean, life is emotional. So going from raising your children to they have their lives, but that's the way it's supposed to be, you know. But as parents, you raise them the best that you know how, and for me and your dad, which I guess I should speak for myself, it was important for me to instill the Lord being in you and your sister's lives, and then once you instill it, it's it's up to you guys to go forth from that, which doesn't mean that us as parents we still continually every day pray for your children. Don't ever not do that because life is so different now. Um, and I want my children and my grandchildren to be covered. Now I have step children and step grandchildren, and I pray over them. We pray over them every day.
And so whenever the whole process goes down, divorce is finalized.
Mm-hmm.
It was something that was whenever, and we won't get into my part of it, my testimony, still kind of held myself, to my own blah blah blah. Hannah and Dad. Hannah was at this time, she's doing her own thing,
Right.
and she's kind of flocking the nest, so to speak. Um, so none of us are really around. I was still out doing my own thing. Um, when is it that you decide it's time to move on? It's time to I'm okay with this. This is something that, whether it's right or whether it's wrong,
Right.
it's a something that the Lord has forgiven. It's all done. I'm good to start anew. When was that, and what was that process like?
It was, I mean, I was alone a lot. Um, I had started working for a lady in Branson, uh, running her errands and cleaned some. She had two um, teenage girls. Uh, she was very well off, so she was looking for somebody to help with errands and stuff like that. And so I was, after Ellie and Taylor went to daycare or went to school, um, started kindergarten, I got the job with, and her name was Patty, in Branson. And I would come home and everybody just had their separate lives. And I was ready. I mean, I just, I felt lonely, but I knew, as far as, you and your sister, your lives, that's what you're supposed to do. Your lives is supposed to go on. But I wanted, I wanted a different kind of life. Um, and I just felt okay. And it was about at the end of summer, fall time. I think I think that's when it was just I felt empty. I felt numb. Whether it was the whole gamma of everything, uh, and the whole many years of having separate lives with your dad, and I felt like it was an okay time because you had your life, your sister was doing her thing, my daycare kids was going to school, and I knew they was going to be fine. I know it sounds stupid. It probably sounds stupid, but I just felt then I need a different life, and that's just I was ready.
And I know, obviously, kids are going to play a major part in that, keeping a marriage together. Um, but there are so many times where I think about, just being raised up, and Dad doing his best to, whether it was basketball or baseball or whatever. He always made sure that he was some way injected into my life, some way. He hated baseball. It was boring. My father is a very impatient man. It was very boring to him, but I loved baseball, so
Yes.
for me, he started up a baseball team. We were very good, um, and my cousin was on it. So I'm what my point to that is whenever it comes to my dad, I never seen the loving. He was loving in his own way,
Right.
going from a family that was the main that was your main, what's communication, that was your main
Yes.
form of communication,
Yes.
was affection, was emotion. So you go from a man who is very distant, and Brooklyn is the same way. Um she's very talkative, she's very, affection is
Right.
that's her communication.
Right.
I am very, hey, give me a minute, I just got home from work. What's wrong? What's wrong? Something's wrong with me. So you go from that weighs heavy on a marriage too.
Yes.
So your family at this point in time, um, we've still got. I mean, like I said, Jesse's still doing very well.
Yes. Praise the Lord.
Yes. So whenever we talk about all of this stuff, it's like I said. I know there's two sides to every story,
Hmm.
but what I want, what really is fascinating, is what God did through that, because I held a grudge against you for a very long time, because the devil was just like, hey, she left you, Jack. She doesn't love you. Blah 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 blah. Not realizing I put off the vibe of I want my own thing. Leave me alone. Don't touch me. Quit bothering me. You held me in all this time. Stop it. I can do my own thing now. But then I'm going to use this as bait against you, just because I was mentally, and emotionally frustrated. So I put off that vibe. You have I'm not wanted here. My husband doesn't want me. My daughter doesn't really. I don't want to say Hannah didn't care for you, but at that time, Hannah was so busy doing Hannah.
Yeah.
Hannah didn't really visualize anybody else but Hannah. And that's not, I mean, she was 17, 16, 17. So it wasn't like, she,
Well, I want to stop you there. It's not that I didn't feel like I wasn't wanted. I I I knew that it's a process in life. Maybe it was not that I wasn't wanted, it was that I wasn't needed. That I had done my job, if that makes any sense. As a mom, I got you to where you had a life and your sister had a life, but there wasn't no life in the home with me and your dad, so to speak, and hadn't been for a long time, years. And he was, and I guess still now, he was an awesome provider, but the affection, it wasn't there.
and the thing is it's not like my dad is a steady in church. It's not that my dad is a role model um, as far as what you would need a man of Christ to be. I mean, he was a very good provider. The only issue is whenever it came time to church, we were sleeping in because we were at a rodeo last night. There wasn't that dedication. There wasn't that. I mean, through James River, we signed up to do multiple things. We painted Pershing. We would go after
Exactly.
the 4th of July. I mean, I remember volunteering in the
Yes.
church. But the only reason that I volunteered in the church was because I got to be around you and Jesse.
Yes.
So I was comfortable around my group. But it's not like my father is a steady constant in church. He's not waking up and going to church. Him and my sister are sleeping in and all of this stuff. So, and that's one of the things that I realized early on was how my relationship with my dad with Christ was so comparative, because during the divorce, I seen him go towards Christ,
Right.
and it was all full bore Christ until the next big thing happened,
Right.
and until he caught the next break and everything was fine, and he was going to go with the next trend and fad, and all of a sudden God became a second. Me and him were just like that. Like I would, when I would need Christ or want Christ, I was full bore with it, and that would last 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and then I would want something and ask God for it, and God's like, "That's fine, but you've got to be prepared. Here, take it." And then I would
Right.
crash and burn and blame him. And so that was one of the things that I realized about me and Dad. So that was another important part of this story, is there's not a head figure father wise that is saying, "I'm here for Christ." It's all you. You're the wife of the family. What would you say as far as, and it's very important that you were that head figure. I'm not belittling that.
Right.
But you have somebody who is a single mother, who whenever I say single mother, that may not mean that she is a literal single mother. It may mean a mother that is the only mother providing um, that 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 influence in the household, that
Right.
figurehead in the household,
Sure.
um, because it was vital that that was there for me. Because had it not been there for me, I wouldn't be here right now. That's it was vital to have that. So I'm not belittling, but
Right.
how important it is to have the father as a figurehead. What is some advice that you would give whenever it's disheartening, whenever they're like, "Man, I just wish he would wake up. I just wish he would go. I just wish, I just wish, I just wish." Whenever it comes to the wits end of it, what's advice that you would give them to help strengthen them, to help them realize whatever it is they need to realize? What's advice you would give for them?
You mean to
Help
help
strengthen them.
strengthen the husband?
The wife
Oh, the wife. Help strengthen the wife.
or the single mother, whatever the case is. Like I said, I know when I'm saying single mother, I mean like
The one that's
the one
being
that is being
the
the f-
Christ-like
yes.
person of the head, Christ-like person in the household. Don't give up. Keep praying. That's just trust in God.
And in a twisted way, I say a twisted way for me because there was pain that had to happen, but my father ended up being the figurehead for me in my relationship back with Christ in a pivotal time when I was holding grudges because my father went through all of this, and yet I remember I would come home from work at night and he would still be praying. And I'm like, "Why is this guy still praying? Like he's lost it. He's lost it and he wants to pray like okay, like I understand his logic because I've wanted and been in need before, but then that's
Right.
when I realized that's when my dad, whenever bad things would happen, he would run to God. And then when things would heal and time would get better, that trend would follow back to, oh, I want this, I need this, blah 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 blah. So I've seen my dad in the heavy in church,
Hmm.
wake up and he's studying the Bible till 12 in the morning, and then I've seen my dad whenever we've been fishing at 7 in the morning smoking a cigarette. So
Right.
it's I've seen both sides of my dad, so I know you've seen both sides of my dad. But how easy was it to because I know, like I said, my side of it. How easy is it for you to now be like, because it is for me, I like it a lot, to laugh at the devil because he tried to do a
Exactly.
lot there.
Yes.
He tried to kill my relationship with Hannah. He tried to kill my relationship with you. I had no relationship with my dad. And out of all that, me and my dad have a relationship. And now here we are talking about it. So there's another physical evidence
Well,
of
not only that, but he tried to take my son twice. You was very, very sick when you was getting ready to turn 5, and it was a virus, and it set in your eye and made your eye cross, and they thought you had a brain tumor. So you was sick, 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 and that was heavy, heavy pray time. I mean, you was sick for about close to a month, and then you finally started getting better. But obviously, but then, like you said, there was the truck hitting the go kart accident, and you know, like you said, you sit and you laugh at the devil about it because never miss a day of praying for your children, and you're going to have some. Don't ever miss a day because you can sit back and look at things and say, God did this, God did that, you know, devil, we got you.
and it was cool too because and I made the comment to Brooklyn yesterday. I almost text you and I woke up to the text this morning that you had sent. I got James, my boss, was nice enough to give us a half day yesterday. And so I was able to take off a half day. I went home and you and my sister and her wife were there, and we all for 2 to 3 hours got to hang out in the house and just talk, and which Hannah stayed. I know I say 2 to 3 hours, and you're like, it wasn't 3 hours, but Hannah stayed after you left. But just sitting and talking, and it's funny. The house that I live in now was the house that we stayed in the basement. The house
Yeah.
that I live in now was the house that my sister bought from my grandma, and she had a roommate, and we went through what we went through with that house we were supposed to buy. She needed a roommate, so we moved into the house. So here it is, back into the house. My sister asked if we want to buy the house. They're looking for a house. They live in the house. So it all relates back to this house.
It
But you
does.
sent that message about how you wanted time to spend together as a family, because we hadn't really been all as one in a minute, just because Hannah
So
working,
much.
But I made the comment to Brooklyn. I was like, that was kind of cool. We got to do that
Yeah.
today. But to look at that, and you talk about what it is, and I did make the comment, my sister's wife, and people may have been
Yes.
like, no, you said that wrong. No, I said that right. Still love my sister. She knows.
Absolutely.
Everybody knows we still love her. I don't care what anybody
Absolutely.
says. We've been closer than we've ever been. But so my sister, you have that battle in your life as well, and I wouldn't. I guess I don't want to say you didn't battle with it, but I don't know how you took it. Whenever you have somebody who comes to you and they say, "Hey, this is how I am," you being a Christian person, raising your kids, knowing that that's not right, but still having forgiveness. Was it something that you were like, "This is just a phase, and it's gonna die out"? What was your first thoughts on it? Because that's another thing that's important when it comes to home church. We are about community, we're about purpose, you're
Absolutely.
about Jesus, and Jesus is all about forgiveness. Jesus is all about, yeah, you may not be doing the right thing, but here's the thing: I'm not asking you to drop that thing and then come hang out with me.
Right.
I'm asking you to come hang out with me and see how I do things.
Right.
Let me show you the ropes. Let me show you what's going on. And then, if you still want those things, you can go back to them. But let's see my way. So, that mentality, does that first take place with you? Because knowing your family, very old school family, that's not the way of things. Obviously, my dad's train of thought is the same way.
Right.
What was your mindset?
Well, when she came to tell me, honestly, I thought she was going to tell me she was pregnant. um, I had no idea because she was a blubbering mess. But then when she told me, you know, I it co- obviously she wasn't married, so I was like, oh, okay. Thinking in my head, because she called and said she wanted to talk to me about something, and she was even crying at that. And so I was a little concerned that, oh boy, we may be having a grandbaby. And so when she told me that she was gay, um, even though what the word says, this is your child, she's my child, and I love her. She knows how we feel, and she even said it, Mom, I know how you feel. I've struggled with this. And to know your child has struggled so hard with something, you just love them. You love them.
Yeah, and the reason I didn't bring that up to shame my sister, I bring that up
No.
because I felt with Alexis there, I felt like we were a family. And I
Yes.
felt like if there's anybody that has a problem with this is how I feel about it.
Exactly.
Because I love them so much. And I
Absolutely.
just wanted to bring that
And God
forward.
is love.
Yes. And that's the thing that
And
I
He
hope,
loves them.
yeah, and I hope that they know is that. That's what I want to portray. So I doubt they may not watch this. I don't know. I'm not sure. But it was just really cool. So but we're gonna go ahead and start to land this plane. Um and we'll talk about what is it that you made the comment about kids. You made the comment about that's something that you would like to vert back into here at home church is more of the kids
Yeah.
with a granddaughter, Willow Grace.
Absolutely.
That whole process for me was crazy. What's it like for you? Because I know, like I said, how important family is and how, in general, loving and, caring. Now that we're back together and we're close, what is it like being able to show that, to, 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 to be able to have that to fall and thank him for people that need to understand what it's like to get through that struggle. What's on the other side? Because it doesn't happen overnight. We didn't grow
No.
back. This didn't happen.
No, it didn't.
It wasn't until how old was I? 20 when it was I 20 19 20 20 because I
20.
20 because I didn't I turned 21 yeah, whenever I started working at Somo.
Yes.
So yeah, I would have been 21, and it wasn't until 31. So it was a span of 10 years. Obviously, there was the hey, we're gonna have Christmases, but it was still the awkwardness. It was still I love you. I'm going to respect you and come to Christmas. And I've never been about gifts. It's not about I was solely showing up for the gifts. So I don't want it to seem like that, but it was
No, right.
out of respect. I'll be here, but I really don't. I'm not gonna fully give you me. That didn't happen until, and well, I would say 29.
Yeah.
It was whenever I started at home church. So that's been
Two.
a year before I started at home church. I would say is really
Yeah.
whenever we started.
Yeah, because
So it's been about 4 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So just getting the feeling. y- I've been tremendously blessed throughout all my life. I really have. But then, I guess your children grow up enough to come back, and that's kind of what happens. I guess it's like your children get old enough that then you can be friends and you can have this different connection. That's that's a peaceful feeling. It's a joy in life that everybody needs to experience. Um, you bring your children up the best that you can, the best that you know how. Not everybody brings them up the way my children were brought up, and that's okay. But when you get to a point that they've grown up enough that they can be your friend again, not that you wasn't friends before, but you were their parent. Now you can be their parent and be there for guidance and stuff like that, but there's a friendship. And then there's a whole new ball game when your children have a child. It's a feeling that and it's the same thing as until you're a parent and having that feeling. And you know that now. And Zach, you're going to. We're praying on that. Um, it's a whole new feeling. It's a joy unspeakable. It's just wow. I have, your Dwayne, my husband, your stepdad. He's got grandkids, and they're my step grandkids, but they're my grandkids. And I'm not saying anything bad about that at all because I love them. But it's when you see your child have a child, now I see what he has seen.
Well, and that's the point too. I mean, yes, it's his kids, and they're having a kid, but there's something about, like you said before at the beginning of it, the thing that you were told you couldn't have is now having its own child that they
Oh,
didn't think they could
yes,
have.
and
So,
that is definitely.
and whenever it comes to Dwayne, I want to um, let him know how much that I love and adore him too, because I know that maybe for him, which I did, I was gonna make you guys pay for hurting me. So there may have been a time where he was like, man, this kid's just a tough one to crack, and he doesn't. I want to let him know that I respect him. He's a very hard worker. He's a very kind man, and I there's no grudges. Um, and it's pretty cool, like I said, to look back on it and you think about what all was supposed to be destroyed and what all was supposed to be laid to waste. All of this stuff was supposed to be divorce. It's done. Um, you would think with your mother and your father passing away, it's done. But whenever Hannah, my sister, got married recently, my cousin Dalton was there with his baby, which is my aunt Cindy's oldest son, or well, only son, but son. He was there. My Amanda, she was there. We used to all hang out together. All of these people coming back together and are in the life. What's supposed to be torn away, people may think it's done. It's over with. We need to just go ahead and set a baseline because I did for so long. You set a baseline for where your lifestyle is going to be at now. Okay, well, I can't. I've done this, so I'm going to set a lifestyle for myself here, and this is just a standard. And then you realize God's got a higher standard for you than what you have, and that things that you want may no, these aren't going to work. So, as somebody who has seen trials, who's seen tribulations, who's seen their kids grow, who have seen all of these things happen, what is the first thing that comes to mind as far as what God has done that was the turning point for you, was just a pivotal point for you, and why it was?
A little point
As
as
far
far as.
like you're still in your relationship with God.
Oh, I.
You would think after all, people would assume after all of this, things are going to be things for Diana are going to be peachy now. So Diana's
No.
retired right now. Diana's no, Diana still has struggles. Diana still has her daily life that she has
Oh,
to
yeah.
go with. So you would think that there's an end to this story, but there's not. You're learning something
No.
anew every
And
day with Christ.
absolutely. And until the day I die, it will be that way. It's that way for everybody. Lot.
So what's something recently that the Lord's put on your heart that you're learning about now at the age that you're at that you're like, why couldn't I have gotten this in high school? Just an example.
Well, I guess an example for what we have previously been through is Dwayne and I. Um, he he went from a job that he was at for many many years, uh, over 20, I think 25 years or plus. Um, with He just felt it was time for him to move on, um, and he was bettering the family with a company that he had gone with. And the long gist of it is been through a lot. Um, the company that he left, that he was with for so many years, come at us with lawsuits, and it was a battle for 4 years. It was a battle. Um, it was a season, and I'm so glad that God has brought us through it. Um, but He's never left us. We never was without. Uh,
Something that is crazy to me is so you would think somebody so through all that was patience. You had to
yeah,
learn patience, right? You would think somebody who waited for a child when they were told they couldn't have a child would know patience, right? You would know that. And it's amazing to me that God still continues to teach me every day on something like patience. I thought I would have learned patience by praying over Willow. I thought I would have learned patience by hours of sleepless nights. You would
Mm-hmm.
think by this time it's like we've got it. We understand it, right? Because now I've got Willow, right? I've got Willow as an example of my faith. So I should have some amazing patience. I my patience, but here's the point. I used to have no patience. Now I have some patience.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still only 30 whatever years old. I can't remember
32.
my 32 years old. I either text my wife or my mom whenever I need to know my age because I just remember that I'm in my 30s. So, um, I don't care to
That's
know the
not a
exact.
lie.
I don't care to know the exacts. I don't remember birthdays. I don't remember special events, and it's not because I don't want to. It's because I'm just not gifted for that. Numbers aren't my thing. But anyways, um, so you start to pick up. You would think after this whole time, patience is something that we're rooted in and we've
Mhm.
got by now, but it's
But
not.
that's where the devil will get you at. That's where he will stomp you. And if you let him, he's going to keep on digging. You got to nip it in the butt. But you just got to stay on top of it because we have a God, we got Jesus, there's the devil. And, you know, we've been learning about, the Holy Spirit. You just, it's instilled in me. And they will bring that, the Holy Spirit, I say they, he will bring that to me in my mind. And I will know when something is going to, not always, but a lot of times. So it's a battle. It's a battlefield, and you got to know how to beat it down.
And that's just one of the things. I know there's a lot of things that we continue to hammer home in every podcast, and it's like, man, will you be quiet with that? But it's just the truth. I mean, it just comes so second nature for us. Our God is so amazing,
Yes, he is.
and He is so incredible. He is so all powering that
Yes,
we
he is.
just, there are things that whenever He says He's going to provide for us, we're like, okay, well, then why don't I have a brand new flat screen TV? Oh, brand new flat screen TV. When was the last time you hung out? When was the last time you read scripture? When was the last time? So we want to get upset because we don't have the next big thing that the world's putting out there, and we need to realize we may not have millions or thousands or tens or $1 in our bank account, but if you've got a roof over your head and all
Yes.
things, bills are getting paid, we don't have extra money to go out and see this movie. Oh, but you've got each other.
Yes.
That was one thing that loved about my uncle Jesse is my uncle Jesse was somebody who was he was in and out of jail, then he finally went to prison for a minute, gets out, changes his life around. He was particular about everything. He was a man that was a military, he was in the army.
Mm-hmm.
He fought for his country. He was a very particular, he didn't have a lot, but he
Right.
did with what he had, and it was to him worth $1 billion. It may have been a rusty old spatula, but somebody gave it to him, and he's
Yes.
keeping it clean. Better watch that thing. If for those of you that don't know, my uncles are very, very verbal, very vocal, very loud. At times I get loud. It's because my uncle didn't have very good hearing.
Yes.
So we were loud. We joked around with each other. I love laughing and joking around and cutting up. But that was something that to me is funny how you could go from where he was to where he's at and all of that fun stuff, but to know that there was somebody there throughout your life,
Yes.
throughout your story. God gave you who you needed when you needed.
Yes, he did.
And so to say that the struggle is over, you would think my uncle made it, right? But my uncle made it out of a bad situation. to get ready for another situation.
Yes.
So if he would have just laid down and went back into prison, he could have followed that lifestyle, but he had to put a stop to a certain lifestyle, a certain group of folks, a
But
certain
that's what
this,
strengthens us.
and he let go of what he wanted,
Yes.
and he started following away. He started going to church. He started delving his time in. He started reading scripture, and that didn't make him perfect by any
Right.
means.
Absolutely.
There's not any of us that are perfect, and there are times where I'm going to slip up. There are times where you're going to slip up.
Yes.
It's just important that people understand that you would think whenever somebody gets up on a pulpit and they tell a testimony about, I was never able to have children, now I can. Oh, so you've got perfect patience. You have everything down pat. And then you realize we're going through this lawsuit. We're going through this. You go through these things, and a lot of the times I think we just put ourselves in the boat of just go through the motions, get ready for a rough time. Okay, this is a quiet time. Hurry, be peaceful. Get ready for rough. Get ready for rough, and you don't open up to the fact that it's a learning process. And just because it's uncomfortable
Right.
doesn't mean that you're going to die from it. It doesn't mean
Exactly.
like it's hard. God's just asking you to go say something to somebody.
Right.
That's really that hard. And so you start making these leaps, and you realize that there are things that are really that big after all, that we make a big
Right.
this big
It's big at the moment.
yeah.
You feel like it is.
And so it's just important for people to understand that it's, yes, be prepared for the storms. You have to be prepared for the storms. That doesn't mean worry about the storm. That means
Exactly.
prepare for the storm. That
Yeah.
means to have everything ready for the storm. That means to have your ducks in a row for the storm. That means having your kids, your family rooted. What is a storm? A storm was divorce. What happened? Your family was deeply rooted in Christ, which there was a time where dad did go to church. There was a time where dad was a steady face in church. We were planted in those roots. The storm of divorce comes through. Yes, there's damage, there's destruction, there's clearing that needed to be done, but at the end of the day, we were all deeply rooted in the soil of Christ.
Yes.
What did he do? He covered us back over with new dirt, and here we are growing again. There's going to be another storm roll through.
Yes.
There's going to be stuff that's going to happen in our day-to-day lives that's going to affect our attitudes, that's going to affect how we see things on
Right.
a daily. And it's important that you realize that it's not a steady. It's not the Lord is going to constantly be moving. He's
Yes.
constantly new. He's always providing. So there may be times where you're at a steady job for 10 years and God's like, hey, go.
Right.
What do I do? Trust in me. The faster you trust in him, the faster
Oh,
you up.
yes.
I mean, that's the crazy thing. I've always been instilled, and I'm not trying to brag about myself. I've always had a hard work ethic that was instilled
Yes.
by you and my father. My grandpa's as well. That side of the family.
Yes.
My uncles, hard workers. But one of the things that I've always understood was gratitude. I've always understood all that stuff. But when it comes to hard working and stuff like that, I've always learned what it was that I had to do quickly. It's not that I am extremely computer savvy. If you tell me 7 times in a row how to do something, okay, I can get it from here. Let's go. I want to put up my hands. Let's do this. So I've always been a kind of hands-on type of situation with stuff. So I really love this awkwardness that God sometimes will give me, and he'll be like, do this awkward thing, because old me's like, no, we're good. Like, Mom, whoever it was, no, we're good. And to think that I rode a skateboard, which wasn't like I was Tony Hawk or anything like that, but to think that I did stuff like that, I mean, I was afraid of my own shadow.
Yeah.
That's
You didn't
why,
walk till you was 18 months old.
No.
You was afraid.
But I think it's important that people realize that things are just so different with everybody.
Yes.
And that, I guess, something that not geared towards me, but maybe people in general maybe don't know about Dianna that you would want them to know, or that we didn't necessarily cover during this, that you were like, hey, this is kind of something that I would like to be brought up, and just your platform, your term.
Oh, my last sayings of whatever.
Well, not per se just the last sayings, but
Okay.
just something that was covered that you were like, hey, I felt led by the Spirit to say this, and we didn't touch on it. So, or was there
Oh,
anything like that, or
well, just, I mean, going back to when I was just little, I feel like I've always known the Lord. Not that I am special or anything like that, but I've always, and I didn't cover my dad's mother, Grandma Graves. She was a very endowed Christian, and she was a praying woman. So I feel like the Lord has handed a little bit of her in me, because when I was just little, I remember I and my brother's taken me to church. I remember I had a plastic ring, and I remember thinking, I want Jesus to have this ring. And I don't know that I've ever even told anybody about it. I think I have. But where I grew up at on Nickel Street, our houses was pretty close. So I dug a hole in the dirt, and I put this ring in there, and I covered it up. And of course, a kid, it 2 days seems like an eternity sometimes, but I remember it had been a while, and I thought, well, I wonder, because I prayed over it, and I was like, you know, dear Jesus, I want you to have this ring. And I remember I put it somewhere that I would remember to look again. And I went back there, and that ring was gone. So, and saying that, now I'm not a special person, but I know the Lord's heart for all of us is so mighty. It is so much more love than we could ever imagine. But I've just always felt I've had the Lord, and He has covered me many times when bad things could have happened to me personally, being in certain situations. And I just know that He loves me. I trust in Him fully, and I know He's got my back. And in saying that, I'm going to switch it over and say for all of those here in this church, that couples that have been trying to have children, we've prayed over so many in this church, and you all was blessed. My son and daughter-in-law. I now have a granddaughter, Willow. Um, we have Kaylin. Is that your sister? Um, they're having
I
twins.
messed it up before though. I was like, which one is she talking about here? Because I messed
Yeah,
it up.
Kaylin and Jacob. Yeah,
Kaylin, not Caitlin.
yeah.
Kaylin.
Caitlin's my wife, and Kaylin is our sister-in-law.
Right, right. I was just like, okay, I didn't want to mess it up either. Now, they've been praying and believing for 8 years, and they're having twins, and we've just had so many in the church that have been blessed with gifts of bearing children. And I'm an intercessory prayer for everyone, and I will continue, because I was there. I know what it feels like to be told you can't have any, or to be trying and it's just not happened. And you see a woman that's got a new baby, or she's pregnant, or friends, and they're coming in with babies, and you may try to be so sweet to them, but then your heart is hurting. And as a woman wanting to be a mother, it's so soft on my heart that I will continue to always be in prayer for not just people in this church, for women everywhere, because that is instilled in me.
You got any questions?
Yeah, you've been pretty quiet over there,
I,
Zach.
I feel like I didn't really need to say anything this time. So, but yeah, I'm gonna make my way over there to the tech booth. That way we can close everything out like you normally do. So I'll let you land the plane. I don't have any questions.
Um, yeah. As far as announcements go, looks like Jamie's set up the home groups table. Is that what that is over there? Is that correct?
Yes, small groups.
Yeah, we start
Small
our
groups.
new small groups.
So be prepared for that tomorrow. Tomorrow's service. Can't wait. Excited to hear what Pastor Clayton's got to say. I was fortunate enough to be a part of Tuesday night practice, and I'm very excited. Dalton brought out the marshmallows on the drums sticks. He put his marshmallows on the end of them. So very excited for worship this weekend. We thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank my mom, Dianna Long, for Dianna Long White. Or how does that? What is it? Dianna White Long. How does Facebook do that? You put your
Long.
surname or
It's your married
I ain't with the
Long
times,
and
bro.
then
I ain't
White.
social. I ain't on the
long
social.
and then white because
Yeah.
some people may not know your married
Yeah,
name.
yeah. That's what I. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, we appreciate you giving your testimony. Like I
Absolutely.
said, I know that and it may not have been discomfort at all during it. But thank you for being on.
Absolutely.
We don't have anybody lined up next week, isn't that right, Hoss?
Yeah, we don't have anybody on the books after
So
today.
nobody on the books as of today.
Well, that was kind of, I kind of popped that in there as like, well, if you don't have anybody at some point and you just want to throw me in there, I had no idea it was going to be the next weekend.
and that's
Yeah,
what-
I've been kind of slacking on networking, so I need to get on
But
top
I mean,
of that
I
again.
think it's also too. It's kind of like, and whether you get whatever it is about it, on the spiritual moments. So I know those are spiritual moments, but it's always you're getting up in front of people, and so it's kind of even though it's in the schedule, it's coming. It's sort of a yes, it's a spiritual moment, but you need like the Lord's like, hey man, what's going on? And so a lot of the spiritual moments, and everybody's like, oh, they're so moving. That's thank you so much for that word. And it's like I literally God gave me that night of moment of like that wasn't it was just I've always been in the mindset of whatever the Lord's got ready, let it happen. And there's times we're probably going to have 3 or 4 people booked, and then there's going to be times where we're waiting on people. But yeah, if you feel the Lord tugging at your heart, and it's like, hey, get that testimony out there. I know it may be awkward. We don't have to do the camera. The camera is something that I'm trying to grow towards. JB, I love you, buddy. This is for you. This is for you alone and for Jesus. But it is something that I had to throw Jesus in there. But it's mainly for Justin. I love you, buddy. But we don't have to do the cameras. We can do the old school way, and we could go back over in the corner and huddle up. But it is. Oh, Michael was. We had video on him because Michael walked around the room.
We did not have video on him.
Oh, that we went mobile.
Yes.
That was
the first time we actually used the mobile mics.
Things come back to me, and I get excited because I had forgot them at one point, but for some random reason they come back in my head. I was thinking we filmed because Michael
No, he was walking around.
but
That was the
were
first
just
time we
mobile.
used the
Sorry
actual
about
house
that.
mics.
I'll go ahead and close out because that was awkward, but I appreciate everybody watching again. Before too long, we will be on the just click play and then lock your phone. And we appreciate Zach and Zach Nash for all the hard work that they do as far as
Yes.
platforming, as far as streaming, as far as getting the product out there, as far as getting the reach out there. I would love to just that's been on my heart heavily today, is just realizing what God does and what God is going to do through stuff like this, as long as we continue to just let the Lord take over. So if that is something, I just felt that heavy on my heart, the Spirit just led me to say, there's probably somebody that's watching this and they want to give the testimony. but they're like, it's going to be awkward. I don't think it could get any more awkward than a mother and a son talking about divorce. So I can get past it. She can get past it. You can get
Absolutely.
past it. Please, please come up to me and or Zach. Or if you're watching this and you see Dianna and you say, hey, I really don't want to talk to your son face to face. Will you tell him that I would like to be on the podcast?
Absolutely.
Something like that. I just feel led to say that, and there may be nothing come out of that. There may be 2 or 3 people, something that pops up for them. But please don't be afraid to let us know. Sleep in heavenly peace. Here, I'm going to go ahead and give some of our sponsors before we go. They're not technically like sponsors, but they are members of the church business. We've got Sleep in Heavenly Peace. We had Larry on last week. If you're interested in that, please see Larry. Please see Tanya. There it is, right there. Larry and Tanya. Larry's got a little bit more longer hair on his face than that right now. And I do believe Tanya has lost some weight. Tanya
Major.
is lost, some weight. So she's going to look a little bit skinnier. Larry's going to have a little bit longer hair on his face. But still, Larry and Tanya Sleep in Heavenly Peace. A great organization for the beds, getting kids off of the floor. We talked today a lot about wonderful family memories. And I was pleasant enough. The Lord blessed me with a family that I was able to choose a waterbed or a mattress. So that was luxury. I don't know what it's like. I can't thank Larry and Tanya enough for what they do. The other
Amen.
person I can't thank enough for what they do is what this glorious beard right here has in it. Beards and Wrist products. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've got facial hair, if you have anything to do goatee, I'm not saying you have to have a beard, but you do have to have that wonderful beard oil. I love my mom to death. I love my stepmom. I love my father. But no beard oil will do it. It's not just any beard oil. It's not just the Walmart beard oil. It's got something about it. My face just feels not the same if I don't have beards and riffs. It's all natural. I love it. The soaps are amazing. I absolutely love the soaps. Beards and riffs. Nathan Winfield, if you see somebody with facial hair and it's long, there's a 98% chance I'd say a Winfield's got a hand in it. Ask him about Beards and Wrist products. If not, come up to me or Zach. We'll tell you all about it. Everybody, I can't thank you enough. We love each and every one of you, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Service starts at 9
Amen.
o'clock. Some wonderful praise and worship.
Yes.
I would like to tell you when service ends, but that's scheduled. You'd have to ask the man with the glasses when you're walking in, whenever that one's going to end. So, but Holy Spirit, he has been really, 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 really strong. Clayton's been doing an amazing job
Yes.
talking about that. So, be prepared tomorrow for good words, some good worship,
Yes.
friendship, and family. We love each and every one of you. Thank you for joining us. Bye.